Wonderful. I will start with my three panelists, and then I'm going to use the room because quite a number of you here are involved in many things. And this is our first hybrid recording. So in no particular order, I'm going to invite my panelist, Richard Amoa, Head of Research, Innovation and Implementation at ESSA, Education Sub-Saharan Africa. Put your hands together for Richard. Yeah. And Richard boasts a decade and a half experience in education programs, design and management, and he's doing all kinds of things. Currently, he's the head of research, innovation, and implementation at Education Sub-Saharan Africa. He utilizes evidence-based approaches to improve education quality. He holds multiple academic degrees like most Ghanaians. They are too intelligent. You know, people say, Aloski, Charlie, you are smart. Go and do a law degree. It's almost like granite in your pocket. Go and do a degree and put it in your pocket. You know, it's like go and do a degree, go and do this. So he has many. He has PhD in culture and development studies. He uses data. He's just a big man. Put your hands together for Richard. Yeah. Next panelist is Rudolph Ampofo, who is the Global Engagement Lead, Africa and Ghana co-lead for EdTech Hub. And he is the CEO and founder of Craft Education, working to develop essential skills in children by harnessing the potential of teachers and parents across Africa. And he collaborates with African Wikimedia community to digitize national curricula. He's doing some wild things, you know. He leads a team of EdTech experts to support ministries of education through 5 African countries. He's a wild guy. Put your hands together for Rudolph. Wonderful. Welcome, Rudolph. Last but certainly not least is Bernice Imperi Jechi, who is the national coordinator for the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. Put your hands together for Bernice. Yes. Yeah. She has extensive knowledge in education, influencing policies through collaborative advocacy. I like that. You explained that. Collaborative advocacy. Because there's also militant advocacy. You know, my friend Bryce Simmons, he does militant advocacy. And you do collaborative advocacy. So you tell us what that is. With key stakeholders, has a passion for seeing positive change by explaining and exploring available opportunities for Ghanaian children. Master's degree, plenty places. They all went to a lot of school. They are very intelligent people. All right. So what I'm going to do, I have like 50 minutes. I'm going to spend like the first, 20 minutes, 25 minutes talking to my friends here. Then I'm going to open the floor. What is the thesis? So how do we use data to influence decision-making in our spaces and then to influence policy choices nationally, right? So we are looking at this from our own. So this is not just influencing national policy, free SHS versus none. How do you influence policy in your school? Recruitment policy, how do you disseminate curriculum, those things. So we are interested in knowing how to use data and innovative approaches to influence that. And then collectively, how do we use data and innovation to also influence policy? I hope this makes sense, right? Wonderful. I have some known faces here. I'll be coming to you for comments to share your experiences with us. For those of you listening, send us your comments on the WhatsApp number that Nathan will be announcing, because we're going to read some of your comments at the end of the show. And those of you watching this on the stream, even though it's not a live show, we are happy to read your comments at the end. So if you're listening or watching us on Facebook or YouTube, please feel free to send in your comments, which will be read in real time as the program proceeds. So we are creating the future, guys. We are creating the future with a smile. I'm going to ask each of you to tell us why you're excited about education and technology, because EdTech is why we are here together, right? So I'll start with Rudolph. Rudolph, tell me why EdTech makes you happy.
Why EdTech makes me happy?
Yeah.
It allows me to geek out and do all the things that I would not have normally done. I started out, when I was getting ready to go to university, my mother was like, go to school, do accounting, do human resource, do all of these things. So that's what I did. I started out with human resources. Then when I finished, it wasn't enough. She was like, do law. So I did law. And after I was like, okay, so you're a teacher. I enjoy working with you at the school, so why don't I jump into that? But then one of the things I realized when I was doing all of that was it was difficult to move beyond the four corners of the walls every single time.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to provide, relevant support to multiple people at the same time. So I got fascinated with figuring out how I can be in a room but still go outside of the room. And technology was the thing for me. So then I was like, okay, I mean, I like numbers, I like Excel sheets. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Some went wrong, some didn't, but all in all, I'm happy that I'm here, and that's what excites me, being able to go beyond the four corners of a room. So
Wonderful. But tell us a bit about what you do as well.
well, I am with the EdTech Hub. So the EdTech Hub is a collaborative nonprofit organization. It's focused on research.
Yep.
That essentially works with ministries of education across 7 different countries. Africa has 5 of them.
Yeah.
To think through how they can utilize evidence. And when there's no evidence, sometimes there isn't, how they can generate that evidence to figure out how they effectively deploy EdTech. So it really sits within the alley, right down the alley of what we are talking about today. So that's what I do on a day-on-day basis, amongst other things.
So the topic for the day is what you do every day.
Yes.
So I'll come to you a lot.
Don't come to me a lot.
Richard, Head of Research Innovation Implementation at ESSA. What is ESSA? What do you do there?
So thank you very much. My name is Richard Amwa. ESSA is Education Sub-Saharan Africa. It's a non-governmental organization focused in education, but the main goal is using evidence to initiate conversation and inform policy towards the enhancement of quality of education across Africa. So we, based on the evidence gathered, we initiate conversation towards improving quality of education.
And you are the Head of Research and Innovation. That means that you are the guy who leads the effort to get the evidence. Or is that what, because what evidence are you talking about? Evidence from research.
Yes.
Right?
Gathering evidence.
Wow, that's interesting. So do you commission papers? Do you do... I just want to understand. Do you just read books? How do you get the data? How do you get the information that you use as evidence? So if you came to Educhum and said, look, I think we should not give laptops to students because it hasn't worked in any country. How much work would you have done to be able to come to such a conclusion?
Okay. So ESSA as an organization, we don't just work within our own domain, but we work with the appropriate partners across Africa as far as education delivery is concerned. So, and our work now focus more at the tertiary levels.
Yeah.
So we work with the university authorities, the Ministry of Education, and all that. So we look at what is needed, what the issues are. And it's not like we sit down and think, okay, I'm looking at the universities in Africa, University of Ghana, this is their problem. At least certain conversations would have come up. Then based on that conversation, we'll all sit down and co-create what the issues are. Wonderful. Then we'll commission the research and whatever evidence that is gathered, then based on that, a decision is made going forward as to how to remediate the challenge that is found from the research.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Richard. Let's come to Bernice. So you are the national coordinator of the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. What does that mean? And what is this organization about?
All right, thank you very much. The Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition is member CSOs in education space that has come together to do advocacy to influence policies. And you asked me to explain the collaborative advocacy that we have. Yes, so we use evidence-based approach or data to back the policies that we want to influence within the education space. So we gather the information, then we approach the policymakers that this is what we have found on the field. What can we do together? We don't just make noise, do this, do that, when we don't know the actual problem that the policymakers also have. So we sit down with our findings, we talk together and see how best each of us can help to solve that problem.
And how has it been going? I've heard of GINEC for a while, although I can say for the past 3 or 4 years, it's not been as loud. There was a time GINEC was always on air. Is it that you do more underground work? Do you still do media advocacy? Do we hear you comment on free SHS? Do you hear you comment on all these things?
All right. We've been doing that a lot.
Okay.
And then this time we are also focusing on what the grassroots or the community can also do to support our education system. So we are doing a lot of that, and we still do the media advocacy on the free SHS and then all that. So we are still into the media, and we do a lot of advocacy around that area.
This is EdTech Monday. It's coming to you before an audience of probably 50 people in the EdTech space, and we're recording this at the Meltwater Entrepreneurial School of Technology here at East Legon. I have an audience. If they are live, they'll put their hands together. Let me just be sure. My name is Bernard. The panel discussion is on research and insights, advancing education in Ghana through data and analysis. Essentially, how do you influence policy through that? And my audience will help me with questions. I'm going to do 3 rounds of questions for myself, and I'm going to come to the audience. So what you did was preliminary questions. So I'm going to come back to Rudolph. Give me an example of how you use research and data in your work, in influencing educational outcomes. Just a general good case study in like a minute and a half.
A minute and a half, good case study. So in Sierra Leone, one of the activities that we are doing with the Ministry for Basic School Education is to think about how school quality assurance are conducted. And so what we did with a couple of funders was to look at how it's currently happening within Sierra Leone when it comes to school quality assurance. You know, you have officers who, hit the ground, go and take some information and whatnot, and understand what really would influence collection of good data, and how can we scale that approach of collecting really good data. And so after we did that study, one of the recommendations or one of the outputs of that was to look at how you can cost a remote school quality assurance process and what kind of options you need to consider. So that brought us to exploring messaging technology to think through how we can scale school quality assurance processes. So, what we generally do is to just look at what currently is happening, do any kind of rapid studies, or if we've done existing studies or research studies, we'll look at what the evidence is saying. Because ministries and anyone who is into edtech, it's tedious to go through the hundreds of pages of research, right? And that's one of the challenges, no shit researchers. So what we try to do is to synthesize that information into consumable chunks, and then work with the stakeholders to figure out how they can utilize that information, not only to improve what they do, but also to generate new research as they do.
So this Sierra Leone example, was it at the school level, the sector/industry level, or the national level?
So generally it was at a district, just trying to
district level,
work with a few districts to understand what their situation is. Because once you want to go at scale or national sector, it's a big task and it requires millions and millions. Right? So first of all, you need to get some indicators or touch points in terms of guidance tasks, and then you dig deep into understanding. So we have a couple of examples, Ghana being one of them. We have a few in Tanzania, Malawi, which as we talk through, I can share a bit more on that. But that's it.
So just to frame the discussion, I'm looking at this from either the organizational level, where influence education, you can influence a school, you can influence a region, district, you can influence the whole sector, the Ministry of Education, and then can say the whole nation. And all of those are legitimate, right? So I'm happy you shared this at district level and its replicability. Richard, any example of how you use research data to influence educational policy or outcomes at any of these 4 levels?
Yes, so at ESA, we have collaborated with the state agencies and institutions to gather evidence to inform conversation and change in certain plans and policy, if I should put it that way. In 2018, we worked with GTEC, then National Commission on Tertiary Education, and Association of African Universities. Now, there's a conversation that came up as regards to faculty of universities. So we're looking at the demographic of African university faculties. So this research, we sought to look at age, programs, disciplines at the various university levels, student-teacher ratio, and all this sort of things, so to let us understand to what extent is teaching and learning being effective at the universities? And let me quickly say that sometimes some of these things are already there, but you just need the data to concretize it, make it more evidential for people to believe that really what we are thinking is the case or otherwise. So we commissioned a research with the universities involved in Ghana. So all the 10 public universities were involved in this research. And to amaze that it came out that as far as teaching and learning is concerned, faculty members are so way below the enrollment of students that we are getting at our university levels. It will interest you if you look at the humanities or the social sciences, as far as the GTech norm or the policy, in the humanities, you should have a lecturer to 18 students. But from the evidence that we gathered, it was way over 30. And from the evidence that came up, we realized that for Ghana to be able to achieve that student-teacher ratio of 1 to 21 for the humanities, 1 to 18 for the sciences, then between 2016-17 that we did this research to 2025, we need not less than 3,401 faculty members to be able to augment that. Now, based on this evidence that we co-created with AAU and GTech, an implementation plan was carved out. And GTech has since then taken it and rolling it out as to how lecturers at the various universities, especially those who are MPhils, associate professors, especially MPhils who need to be supported to roll on a PhD, because now one of the basic requirements you need to teach at the university now should be a PhD. So if you have an MPhil, you have to work faster to augment that. So based on this evidence that was gathered, an implementation plan was rolled out. And GTech, working with the universities, has since been working on that to ensure that faculty members upgrade themselves to be able to bridge this gap of low teacher-student ratio at the faculty level.
Nice one. Good example. Thank you very much.
And let me quickly add that this was a co-created evidence gathering. ESA didn't sit in our office to do it. We worked with them, had stakeholder engagement and all that. That led to the evidence. So it made them to accept that we have done this together to resolve our own
Wonderful.
challenge.
If you are looking for power words for today, co-create is a good word. So write it somewhere. Co-create, I like that. Co-created evidence. Because sometimes the resistance you face from a lot of the agencies that have to help you implement changes, like they are, who the hell are you? Sorry for my French. So it's always good to have that. The other power word was the word you used, collaborative, right? You said you do collaborative advocacy. I like that word as well. In your work as GINEC, is there any example of when you used research, data-driven approach to shape anything? We'll be happy to hear from you.
All right. I think for some years back, the ministry was, and the NGS was conducting the national standardized test for learners at the basic level to assess their numeracy and their literacy skills to see how well our children can read, especially in the basic public schools. So the very first one that was conducted, GINEC monitored the process to see how it will go. And then the good thing is that NEC is represented in all the 16 regions in Ghana. And then in the northern region, we collaborate with Northern Network Education Division to do our research and advocacy. So we monitor the process, put the report together. Then we engage the ministry that it was a very good thing that the ministry or GES is gathering to make sure that our learners at the basic level improve on their numeracy and literacy skills. So we presented it to them, and then they acknowledged the gaps and where they can improve together with NACA. And then we saw an improvement in the second one that was conducted. The only challenge we are having now is to how to get the results to the school so that the teachers can use that to improve on what they are doing to support the learners. So that is one thing we did. And then we are hoping that the subsequent one we would also follow again to make sure that this NST become a standard that can be used to improve our literacy and then numeracy skills at the basic level. Once again, NEC also conducted a research gathering data about school infrastructure at the basic level. We look at the basic level a lot because we have a lot of challenge when it comes to public schools. None of us want to take our children to the public schools because of the resources that are available there. It is not too encouraging and it is not improving learning outcomes. So NEC did an independent research on education infrastructure at the basic level. We gathered the evidence, the data per all the regions, and once again, we engaged the ministry and its agencies, including Ghana Education Service. That's why we say that we are doing collaborative advocacy. We will not just go on air, there is no this, that, but when it becomes very critical, we will talk about it. So when we engaged them, they took the step to get a policy on infrastructure at the basic level, school infrastructure. So as I speak now, and we were part of the process because we had to give them a lot of grassroots information to put it into the policy. So we were part of the process. So as we speak now, the ministry has a policy on schools infrastructure at the basic level.
Wow.
Now we will follow up to see how the implementation will be. And then we would always say that the challenge is the resource. But we are hoping that once we have the policy, one day it will be rolled out where we would have a standard structure for all basic school. That would also be very inclusive for all children with disability at all forms to be able to access every school in the country, not necessarily going to a very special school that has been created for special children.
Your second example is interesting. So you've managed to get the buy-in. The policy is there, but it hasn't yet been implemented. And I think that gives us insight into the process. It's not just we've done the work, the minister has listened to us, the director has agreed, and therefore we are finished. She's saying that now there's an agreement on what to do, but now the next level is to do it. All right, so it tells you that this probably could take you 10 years. I don't know how long. What's the timeline? The second example you described, what's the timeline you used between when there was nothing to even the agreement that they have to do this? Is it a year, 2 years, 5 years?
I think it's been about 2 years now.
2 years.
2 years as the policy was developed.
Second round of questions. What's the major resistance anybody who wants to influence policy using innovative approaches will face? Again, you can give an example. What's the major resistance you face or you will face? It doesn't have to be a case study because we can't deal with influencing policy without dealing with the resistances. If I try to influence policy as a journalist, there are political interests that will not agree. There are people who say he's too young. Who the hell does he think he is? Excuse my French, kind of thing. So we just want to know so that we can prepare. All right, Richard, you want to go first?
Yeah, so before I take that, let me correct the figure I gave. It's
Right.
3,410. The
Of
faculty
what?
members.
The ratio.
The ratio. You need 3,410.
To satisfy the 1 to 18.
To satisfy the 1 to 18.
And how much do we have
At the
now?
age.
How many do you have now? What's the current state of play?
The current state is 1:33.
And we have to come down to 1 is to 18.
1:21 for the social sciences.
Wonderful.
And 1:18 for the sciences.
So we need to get
that
3,000 more or 3,000 in total.
3,410. Between then, the 2017-18 to 2025, we need to get that to be able to bridge that gap.
Okay, let me be a bit difficult. Forget about my previous question. How is this, how shall I say? Can't you say that we know intuitively that we need more lecturers, right? So why do you need to spend money to tell me that I need 3,000 lecturers to create the optimum ratio? Do you understand? Why is that such a big thing? You need to justify why this is even insightful. Because don't forget, there's a difference between knowledge, data, and insight. So when I came, 8 females, 24 males. So that's data.
Yeah.
1/4 of the people here are women.
Yeah.
That's knowledge.
Yeah.
But really, what you want is insight. You want, so what? Like, you understand? So you just give me a number.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so why is that such a big thing? You need to give me a bit more insight there.
Yeah, so for example, we all know that the effectiveness of teaching and learning depends on the ability of the teacher or the lecturer to have access and be able to manage the class with a number. So for example, if you take the science discipline, we say 1 to 18. There's a reason why we say a faculty member should handle what 18 students because they'll be able to manage them very well, assess each of them based on their ability levels, support them as required, whatever practical lessons that you need to organize. But if they go more than that, then it becomes difficult for the lecturer to be able to reach each and every one of them within the instructional period, within the curriculum and all that. Because don't forget, every student entered the class with a different ability level. And the lecturer needs that time with that ratio to be able to reach out to them. Don't forget, currently, if you look at many of our universities, they have constraints with some facilities. So if the facilities are overstretched with quite a huge number, that is where sometimes we say that we are now teaching science abstractly. So you enter a computer science lab, we have 10 computers, and the students are 20. How effective
Richard,
would this lecture be?
Great work. Let me push you a bit more. So fine, we know this.
Yes.
So let's assume I'm a Legon
Yes.
and I don't have enough lecturers. Don't you think you should also be telling me how can I get more out of these 1,000 lecturers? So beyond telling us that we need 3,000 lecturers for the optimum ratio, we are working with constraints. Government doesn't have money.
Yes.
Shouldn't your research beyond giving us this number say to us that, by the way, with just 1,000 lecturers, if you use the approach that Bagonluri is using with how he manages his class sizes or using a hybrid system, you can still achieve this outcome? Because I'm thinking about innovation, right? So the data is not just to tell me that I am lacking. You're supposed to tell me how I can work myself out. So should you not, beyond stating the obvious fact of the deficiency, then work the data to show how we can actually achieve the outcome? Is that not your real responsibility?
So the innovation, like I said, when we co-created all this with GTech and the universities and AAs, the innovations has been where lecturers who have MPhil and have taught for some years and can be rolled on the PhD program,
Wonderful.
that access, that opportunity is given to those lecturers to sort of roll onto a PhD program across the various universities so that they can get to that level to deliver.
So you've come up with an innovative solution to say we can't wait for people to get a full PhD. We can, in the meantime,
Yes.
find a way of bridging this big gap.
Yes.
Did the schools agree? The government agree? Who are you influencing, schools or government?
GTech and the universities.
They agreed to this.
Agree because, like I said, it was a co-created
Wonderful.
evidence. So we're all on the round
Wonderful.
table discussion. So what do we do? And that's also where they had to engage with
like that.
government to allow some support for them to engage more PhD persons in the system to augment the numbers.
Thank you.
And these actions
Rudolph.
are ongoing.
Yeah.
Just to add to, that, think of it this way. If I have the figure 3,000 something,
Yeah.
and I have 10 cities, and I know it's not enough, my question would be, okay, so how do I utilize this 10 cities to get the best out of whatever it is? So through the collaborative, advocacy approach and general collaboration with, decision makers, you can then to start uncover the right questions to ask. Because sometimes intuitively we know, okay, we need more teachers, right? If you leave East Legon at 6 p.m., you fall into traffic. You generally know you'll be in traffic, once you get to Underbridge. But the question is, where do I pass?
All right.
So then asking those questions starts from just that intuitivity of knowing, okay, I have this number, then what next?
Yeah.
So then, organizations like ESSA, GNEC, and other players then help figure out what are the right questions to begin to ask.
Wonderful.
And then get to the solution. And this is a process. Now, bear in mind, decision makers are dealing with 10,000 different decisions at the same time. So sometimes it's not by design. It just happens that, okay, something falls through the cracks. So organizations who care about free SHS, organizations who care about including African researchers into decision making, then contribute to that larger picture of making a holistic process of getting to the optimal solution.
I like what you said about asking the right question, and I want to be controversial. So I've interviewed Dr. Educhum. He was on my show January, and he basically says, look, free SHS, we're not going to review it. We're going to review it because the data we are looking for is WASI results, and the results are getting better, all right? And then there's a whole group of CSOs who are saying, look, WASI results is just one thing. So have you asked the investees whether this 7A's guys can cope with basic A-level maths, even though he has an A in WASI? Have you found out how they are doing on engineering programs compared to the A-level guys? Have you found out their progression beyond WASI into other courses? So, Rudolph, your point about asking the right question is critical. And my question is, how do we use this, what you've said? Because the biggest debate in Ghana is free SHS and whether they should review it. The government says they're not going to review it, right? Everybody in CSO says access is great, but WASI results may not be the best means of measuring the success long-term of a policy. Yet the minister says, in fact, the answer I gave was, nope. That's exactly what he said. I said, are you going to review free SHS? He just leaned back in the seat. And he's a great guy, I like him. He said, nope, I'm not going to do it. And he's a research guy, he's an education guy, right? So, Rudolph, I want you to elaborate a bit. How do we get to the right question? Because you can set a question for yourself and say, because WASI results was 16% under NDC and it's 17% under MPP, we are not going to review free SHS. When we all know that some universities abroad who used to take people straight from Presec to Princeton, now they're asking you to do other things. They have to write IELTS and things because they're like, these guys, I'm not sure how. We know that it's not just the 7 A's. But the government says, nope. What are you going to do?
Well, it becomes an issue of time. It's like a pressure cooker.
Okay.
When you're cooking beans. My mom used to do a lot of cocoa and beans. And she had this pressure cooker. So you put in the beans and you cook. So as the pressure boils up, governments have priorities every single year. Right? Every single time they are vying for power, they have priorities. And at each point in time, they need to make that strategic decision of figuring out what kind of priorities they need to then focus on to ensure that they continue to be in power. So at some point in time, unfortunately, it becomes an issue of time, and those are some of the necessary evils we need to deal with. And I use necessary evils lightly, right? So those are some of the things we need to basically work with, right? Okay. And look at how time gets to that point. Now, when organizations are, providing insights and, providing additional support to what decision makers are, doing on a day-on-day basis, at some point in time, influence then begins, right? So if you look at it as a sandwich, you have the lower level, you have the mid-level, and you have the upper level. Now, the decision makers policy, they are at the top part of the bun. Now, you have the middle folks who are burdened with the implementation. You have the folks at the end who are burdened with the impact of whatever we do. So there's a thought that, okay, why don't we dedicate our support and efforts to the middle tier and help them think through how implementation is happening? Because then they report directly back to the top button. So it becomes a cycle.
I like it.
And how it all depends on how much funds you have to inject support into the middle tier to then influence decisions at the top. Because at each point in time, if there's a fluid flow of information, that brings to data for decision making, that brings to what edtech organizations are doing on a going basis. As the information flows, at some point in time, something will give. Yeah. Because when you are making decisions in life, you always get to a point where you need to pivot and move somewhere else. So I think at this point in time, the minister is a great guy, and the priority right now is to stick to free SHS, right? Yeah. But then as the information is flowing and as decisions are coming and going, it will get to a point where there will need to be a pivot. As to whether the pivot is to keep going or branch out, that is what we would need to see. And so it really depends on the collective efforts, collective impact, right? So what each individual is doing today to contribute to the corpus of knowledge we have within the education sector and doing their piece to feed that information there. So ESSA has this portal that provides access to open research, right? So it basically makes the research available. And then the question is, how do we then begin to access it, synthesize it, used to influence our work at the private, public, and figure out where we go from there.
Please put your hands together for Rudolph. This is EdTech Monday, and we are recording for a live audience of, what are you guys? EdTech aficionados. EdTech stakeholders here at the Meltwater. Brilliant conversation involving Richard Amoah, Head of Research, Innovation, and Implementation at ESSA. I also have Rudolph Ampofu, Global Engagement Lead for Africa and Ghana, Co-Lead for EdTech Hub, and then Bernice Impari Jechi, National Coordinator for the Ghana National Education Campaign Coalition. We're working our way through a very interesting topic, how to use innovation and data and analysis to produce better educational outcomes and also influence policy. And I just want to take a final comment from Bernice. Then I'm going to attempt to open the floor. Bernice, so Guinea is a good example of collaboration. All right. Just talk to me a bit about how you guys work with stakeholders because you say you are not controversial. You build consensus. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Can Guinea take leadership in consensus about free SHS as a case study? Would you take up that challenge to say you're going to collaborate with everybody to do some research and then hopefully everybody agrees, NDC, MPP, that we all agree that we're going to do this to free SHS from 2025?
All right. We pray that it happens, that we all agree that let's look at the free SHS again and let's see how we can make it better using evidence, data, research to make it better than it is now. We know that the free SHS is a very good policy that has increased access to senior high school in Ghana. But the other nitty-gritties that is behind, how are we dealing with it to make sure that the outcome is the best for the country? Our fear is that free SHS was introduced by the government in power now. What happens when there is a change in power? So if we all agree that free SHS is good and then we would want to look at it, we will take up that challenge and collaborate with everybody. At the end of the day, we want to see that better outcome in our education system. That is what we are all looking out for. For some time now, the political influence in our education sector has become so much that today SHS is 3 years, tomorrow is 4 years, the next day is this. So we are ready to take up that challenge, collaborate with everybody. Let's sit around the table. We were calling for review for all stakeholders to sit down, not to condemn the policy or whatever, but to look at what the policy is, what we can do. As at now, we don't even have access to the full policy of free SHS. What is it and what is into it? We've been asking for that document and it's difficult. So we are able to take up that challenge. All stakeholders coming together, we review the whole policy, make input everywhere, and see how we can all support to make sure that we have the best SHS outcome for every Ghanaian child and even other non-citizens who are within the country. So we are ready to take up that challenge. I'm just praying that we would all come together one day, like Rudolph was saying, that the cooking pressure, maybe one day that stage will come where we can all come together to make sure that we have reviewed the free SHS, not the free SHS alone, but even from the basic level. Now we are talking about education technology. We have seen in the news that very soon all free SHS students are going to have one laptop each. It's a good thing. But have we looked at our teachers, their capacity to even support these learners to use the laptops? Have we checked the facilities in the schools to make sure that it is going to support the device that are going to be used? What of if there is a breakdown along the line? Even the learners themselves, how are they going to really use it for effective teaching and learning? So these are some of the things we have to look at. And then we are hoping that one day we will all come together, review all this, and get the best outcome for our education
Let me just
sector
ask a
in
question
Ghana.
on the basis of what you said. Do you think sometimes our advocacy is aimed at the wrong person? So it's like we think government is the most important person because government says they'll give one laptop to each student. At least they said it in Wesley Girls. So hopefully all Wesley Girls, whatever. Don't you think we should also focus more on influencing the recipients? Because you gave a good example. You said there's the initiator, the implementer, and then the impact, all right? It seems as if CSOs in the edtech space are focused on what to do to government. But government is doing what it thinks the voters want, right? So don't you think if we spend a lot more time telling people that it's actually a very bad idea to give everybody a laptop? So when a politician comes, I'm going to give you a laptop. You say, I don't need a laptop. I need shoes to wear. Do you hear my point? It seems as if we are always trying to tell, when the government has already decided what they want to do because they have a 4-year cycle and they want to win elections. And so they're not going to listen to you anyway. So should we not spend a lot more time doing it from a demand side? That when politicians come to you and they offer you this, tell them that, no, this is what I want. Maybe more of our work will be impactful because then they'll say, look, this is not what we actually want. But for now, we're trying a lot of times, meet the minister, it spends you 6 months to meet the minister, gives you 5 minutes. After the 5 minutes, says, I'm going to read your paper, I'm going to even read it. And you spend all year doing this. Meanwhile, you could talk to the schools. You could go to the communities, talk to the women. Talk to the electorate. Would that not be a better use of our time, people? Honestly, what do you guys think?
From the evidence gathering perspective,
Yeah.
for me, Rudolph spoke of what the critical question to ask. For me, another critical question that those players who want to inform or change policy is the critical question is, how do we engage? How do we engage?
Is it not who do you
the
engage
policy?
first?
How is very, very important. Well, you can say the who, but how to also engage the policy players is also very, very, very important. Because, like I said, sometimes if ESA sits somewhere in our office, our field somewhere, gather our data, and come to Minister of Education, yes, we have gathered this evidence that this is not happening, so we expect you to do this.
Yeah.
It will really be resisted. It will be resisted because they don't know why you are coming with this. They don't know the methodology, the biases that would have gone into it. So I am not saying it's a perfect fit or a perfect match. However, it makes a lot of good when these players at the policy level or the government level are part of working together to even identify what the problem is, gather the necessary evidence, prescribe whatever solution are we going to do. Now, you spoke of who to engage. Yes, it even starts from how this engagement will go on, then who are the players to be involved. Because you spoke of at the grassroots, maybe at the district, at the regional and national level. Each of these stakeholders at the various starter need to be engaged at different levels with different conversation sets. And it builds up that way. Because you cannot engage a school head, just discuss things, and the district director or the regional director is not aware. You cannot go to a university, engage lecturers to ask them, what are your problems? And the dean, the vice chancellor is not involved to know what the problems are. Because they also have, as management unit, their own problems, their own challenges based on which
So you're
they
saying
are governing the system.
for education, it will be difficult to leave government out of the discussion.
Yes.
Rudolph, you agree?
Well, let's put it this way. It's unwise. Let's put it that way. Largely because governments, ministries of education, more specifically, are tasked with the education of a country. So they engage at the very top level, trying to figure out what the nation should look like from an education perspective. So at the end of the day, there's that machinery or there's that mechanism that has been established, right? Where we've all decided that democratically we need, a spear to move us through, and education being one of those components. So to basically then, essentially what you're proposing is going rogue, and then basically going to all the people that you feel can influence the situation. But at the end of the day, there is that national component that comes in and public investments, right? So then we'll pay taxes. Each and every one of us will pay taxes. Let's not go into that conversation of taxes. But at the end of the day, all things being equal, we pay taxes. It goes into the national complex. It's distributed, and a piece of it goes into education. Now imagine a situation where we've paid taxes, we've influenced the middle tier. They are not taking what the band is saying. Yeah. And then the money is sitting down. Do we invest it? Where do we put it? So what point I'm trying to make is it's collective. It's a collective effort. Yeah. And so in as much as we would want to say, yes, people are not listening, it's a process. The fact that they are not listening and you're not happy about it doesn't mean that it is a wasted.
No, I get you. Let me know. Like, the question is not necessarily like your organization shouldn't engage government. Yeah. So I'm asking a general question. We are in education. So if you want to say, for example, improve the way math is taught in schools, you could decide that I'll start with private schools and introduce a learning tool for them.
Exactly.
As the tool helps them to get better outcomes. Yeah. Other schools say, why is this school doing so well? Right. So it's a longer term process.
Exactly.
All right. So I'm not saying don't talk to government. I'm talking about different outcomes. There are private schools now who use different approaches to study.
Right.
And based on the outcomes they are getting, it becomes interesting for others to follow.
Right.
You get me? So I'm saying that if you have limited resources and you have this political economy where politicians really don't want to change their mind because they want to win elections. And I interviewed them, so I know. I can say this on air. Wouldn't collectively be better for us to focus on organize? So that's why I give you the 4 levels: organizational, regional, sectoral, national. I was at a conference recently. Private schools came together at UPSA. They did a conference. We came to exhibit. And they were sharing experience about how they do school management, how they grow leaders in the schools. Some guy from Koko came talking about how he incentivizes people to lead in the classroom. Brilliant program. The Minister of Education came late. Deputy came late. Came to just give a speech and go. He's not against that. Right? Fine. You want to be able to measure impact and say a policy has changed. And sometimes a donor problem as well. So a donor wants you to say that I changed 3 policies. But life doesn't really work like that. In the sense that if you can get all the schools in Medina to agree to share experience so that the strong schools will help the weaker schools, after 6 years, the lowest school in Medina, the gap between that and the higher school will be smaller. There's no policy has changed, but you've improved an educational outcome. Right? So I'm trying to say that let's rethink how we measure change. Because real change can be initiated at the top, but it actually solidifies at the bottom. All right? So I'm not telling you not to talk to government. What I'm saying as a media guy is that, from my experience, change is easier if you change people's minds. And when you change people's minds, the politician will take a cue from that and adjust. Because he studies the people and tries to get them to come to his side.
And that's the whole point of...
No, okay, yeah, whoever.
Go.
Sorry, I think, Bernard, I buy into your idea. It is something we can start, and then we've used that approach at a certain stage where you empower the citizens, community themselves to demand for something that belongs to them, especially when it comes to school management leaders. They are able to monitor when the teacher comes to school, when the teacher goes, and some other things to help the school to grow. But there are some instances too where it will be very difficult. Now, government want to give every SHS student laptop. Then you go to the schools, and when they bring you the laptop, then don't take it. You want to talk to the headmistress because this and this and that. It will be very difficult. You will get there, but it will take a very longer time to do that. Even when it comes to our electoral system, we know what we need, what is good for us as citizens, but we don't go for that one, but rather something small from the politician just to cover up a problem that can be solved for a whole community or a whole region. We can start from somewhere. This is a behavioral change something, but it will take time.
I'll take a final comment from Rudolph and I'll open the floor. You just want to comment?
I just wanted to highlight that's where evidence comes in, right? So organizations will conduct research. It's not basically at the behest of ministry or education or whatever. They have their own research agendas, right? But organizationally, we all have our own research pieces. EdTech organizations would roll out an initiative. They would do an impact study to figure out whether it's working or not. Same for research organizations, right? So as with, let's take the laptop situation, right? So if, as an example, one of these organizations, CSOs or whichever, EdTech, whichever, basically says, well, this is the evidence behind laptops and learning. These are the gaps. This is how this didn't work in one situation. This is how it worked in the other situation. So where is that middle that we can figure out to use? So at the end of the day, the conversation, it moves beyond laptops are terrible, don't bring them to schools, but it's about how can you effectively utilize the laptops to achieve the outcomes that you want to.
I like
that. And that's the biggest question. So at the end of the day, it could be every student gets a laptop. Okay, maybe we can give 3 laptops to X number of administrators to do Y number of things to see where we get to. We still need to research into that. And so you have donors, you have certain individuals asking the question, what do we know about laptops in the hands of students?
Wow.
Then the evidence can then support that. And the implementation may change, which at the end of the day, so they have something called
I like what you said, and put your hands together for Rudolph as we wrap up this segment. I like it. I think what you're saying, in my understanding, is that no matter what hand you are dealt, innovation, research, data can still help you get a good outcome. So you don't wait for an ideal situation. Whatever situation you face, you're in Sierra Leone and the people don't have classrooms. How do you use the best information available to deliver the best outcome? I think that's a great place to end. My final question to each panelist is, so what next? Because at the end of the day, we are trying to say knowledge, insight must drive educational outcomes at various levels, individual, corporate, sectoral, national. So Richard, what's the most important thing? Or what next? What's the next thing to research? You need to really think through this deeply and give me an answer that will give me a headline. Right? I need a headline.
Yeah, if you ask me what next to research, there are a number of critical areas to research. And one of them, I can tell you that to research why already gathered evidence are not working. to tell
like
you,
that.
I mean, coming from the background of research, I'm sad to tell you that Ghana is not a country that we don't have evidence gathered. But a critical thing has been the level to which these evidence, coupled with very clear implementation plans, have been implemented. So it's not an issue of what to research first as to a new thing. There are a number of research gatherings that are there, the evidence are there. But to translate them into policy products, policy transformation, policy modification to the benefit of the student out there from pre-tertiary to tertiary is one of the critical issues. And one thing I want to quickly add, as a country, sometimes, and Prof mentioned something related to that, we need to get a difference between schooling
And
education and knowledge.
Thank you.
Ghana, we are becoming so much of a examination oriented.
Yeah.
So every parent now wants my child to get A. But I can tell on authority, and I know those of us sitting here who know it, it is a perception out there that just about a year ago, universities came out complaining that some students, a cohort of students that they admitted, the performance was very bad. But these are students who came out very, very good grades. So we need to ask ourselves, what do we want? Is it schooling? Is it education?
Is it knowledge?
Is it knowledge? And based on some of these things, then you mentioned something that we need to engage from the ground to change the attitude. If some of these attitudes are changed from the ground there, you don't need Guinea to tell the parent that accept this or not to accept this. I can tell you that some parents, when they heard of this laptops or what is going to be produced, they have become so excited. Yeah, my Babaji laptop. What will you do with the laptop? What's the level of edtech knowledge of the teacher to translate what is in the laptop to the learner to learn? My village in Upper East region, what is the infrastructure deployment there? My village in Upper East region, how many teachers are in the rural setting? We say we have the first-class universities in Ghana. Go to all of them and they can tell you, as far as teaching and learning is concerned, the challenges that they are faced to be able to deliver quality lectureship to students. So it's not an issue of what research to go into, but we should look at what already exists.
How we can use it.
As evidence. How, as a nation, how as a people, we can translate them.
Wonderful. Put your hands together for Richard Amwa. Head of Research Innovation, ESSA. Rudolph. Final words. What next?
Ayeka. So what I'll say is I'm happy that we have someone talking about inclusion.
Yeah.
It's not something that is looked into enough, especially in Africa. Cognitive and other kinds of disabilities. So it's worth the look. In terms of generation of evidence and whatnot, I think the room has a wealth of knowledge and evidence that it can use to influence the lower and middle tier. In any political engagement, I think your biggest bet is the relationship you have with the one you talk to on a regular basis. And that's what a lot of us have, tried utilize in terms of strategy. Find that one friend and figure out how you navigate it with that person. But I think that Nikasimo, you don't need to wait for someone to say, I want your knowledge, I need your evidence. You can get your team together and then put an article out there and say, well, this is what we are learning. But the challenge is, the truth of the matter is that startups don't have the bandwidth to do a lot of these things. And so organizations like MEST, I know MasterCard, Jacobs, they are investing heavily in this piece. But building that muscle to share your story and telling, sharing the knowledge you have to influence the lower and middle tier would be something worth exploring. It might not be an easy task. It's not a simple journey, but maybe it might be fulfilling for you. So as we strive for knowledge and put a premium on that, put a premium on your knowledge and let the world see it and let the Ghanaians hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Round of applause for Rudolph. Venice, I'm giving you the last word. Give me a rousing end.
All right. Thank you so much. We are talking about education technology. We are talking about 21st century skills. We are talking about fourth industrial revolution, breadth of skills in our schools. What do we do with it and where do we start? Now, all these things I've mentioned is not only for the rich in the country, it is for everybody. And that's the only way we can see another level that we want to see our country. So all these things should be introduced and then at the public basic school should be prioritized. We are talking about TVET, STEM, that can prepare learners to be ready for skills out there. Let's start it at the basic level. Why have we neglected the public basic level of all these good things that we are talking about? But if you take the population of learners in public schools in Ghana, it's so huge. So let's start from there. Let's gather enough data, science to see how best we can introduce these things to the basic public schools, and then we can get the results as we move ahead.
Put your hands together for her. Wow. This is EdTech Monday. We've been coming to you live from Meltwater Entrepreneurial School of Technology here at East Legon with a panel discussing how we can use research and insights to advance education and policy making in Ghana. We've been listening to Richard Amoah. We've been listening to Rudolph Ampofo and Benesim Pari Jechi, who've provided a very good basis for the insights. Too many things to do. I don't have the time or the mind to summarize everything. A couple of things that my takeaways. So, knowledge over credentials, very big one that came in from Mark Bagonluri. Knowledge over credentials. And of course, lots of power words, all right? Research is a power word. Evidence-based is a word you gave us. Co-create is a word you gave us. Collaborative is a word I learned here as well. Inclusion is another word I got here as well. I think the most important word has not been used. That's application. Application. Because to succeed, you need two things. You need the willingness to learn, but the commitment to apply. So you have a society of people who are very book long, but very few people are applying what they know. So in addition to everything that has been said, I would say if we can apply even 1/10 of what we've learned, we will then make a difference to shape the policy process. So on behalf of Citi, on behalf of Meltwater and the MasterCard Foundation, I want to say a big thank you for being part of this exciting program. Put your hands together one more time for yourselves. Wonderful.